My name is Lowell Greaves. I'm 42 years old, and until recently, I thought I had a quiet, ordinary life. Not perfect, not storybook, but steady, or at least, steady enough to trust the silence. The silence was where I thought peace lived. It turns out that silence had been slowly eating away at the last pieces of us. Callie, my wife of 11 years, has always been someone who needs room to breathe. She's a watercolor artist, soft-spoken, sensitive, but stubborn in ways that sneak up on you. She's the kind of person who stares too long at clouds, then snaps at you for interrupting her thoughts. I used to find it beautiful. Now I wonder if I ever really understood her at all. The moment that haunts me didn't come in a fight. There wasn't any shouting, no slammed doors or thrown words meant to wound. It came on a still Sunday morning. I was drinking coffee on the back porch, listening to birds I couldn't name, when Callie stepped out in her robe, leaned against the doorframe, and said, "I think I need some space." She didn't look up when she said it. She stared at the yard, as if the grass held the answer to a question I didn't even know she'd asked. I froze. My hand gripped the coffee cup so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't know what to say, because part of me had known for months that something was wrong, and the rest of me had prayed I was imagining it. "Okay," I said, after a pause that felt like an entire winter passed through it. She blinked, looked over at me like she wasn't expecting agreement. "You're not mad. I'm just trying to understand what you mean," I said carefully. "Space? Like, what? Time apart? Or?" She shrugged. "I don't know. Just less pressure. Less routine." It wasn't a clear answer. But then again, nothing between us had been clear for a long time. I'd grown used to her size. Her long hours in the studio. Her quiet dinner bites and long, distant looks at the television screen when she thought I wasn't watching. But hearing it out loud, hearing her say she wanted space, it shattered something that had already been cracking under the surface. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't even ask questions. I think some part of me thought that giving her what she asked for might make her stay. So that day, I stopped texting her during lunch. I didn't kiss her goodnight. I stopped reaching out when she stayed late at her studio downtown. I even made up a few errands just to be out of the house more. And for a while, she seemed relieved. She smiled a bit more. Slept easier. Didn't flinch when I didn't reach for her hand. But the weirdest thing happened 2 weeks later. It was a Thursday night. I came home late from helping my cousin move and found her waiting on the stairs. Her arms were crossed, but not in anger, more like confusion. Or unease. "You've been distant," she said. I almost laughed, not out of cruelty, but sheer disbelief. "You asked for space, Callie." She frowned, looked like she was trying to find the right words, but couldn't. "I didn't mean this much." I nodded slowly. "I just gave you what you said you needed." That moment, that line, that simple response. It was like a mirror was placed in front of her. And for the first time in months, I watched her crack. She started asking questions she never cared about before: where I was going, who I was with, why I didn't come home sooner. She started checking my phone screen over my shoulder, then pretending she wasn't. She'd lean into my side of the bed again, as if testing how far she could stretch before I pulled away. But by then, something in me had shifted. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt hollow. Like I had stepped out of the marriage and left a version of me sitting in it, nodding politely, but already halfway out the door. I still loved her, but now I didn't know what kind of love it was. Was it habit? Was it fear? Was it guilt? Or was it simply the echo of something that used to be alive but had nowhere left? And then came the message I never expected to find. Not a text. Not an email. A folded letter tucked under her sketchbook, with my name in delicate cursive. The kind of letter that makes your chest go tight before you even open it. I still haven't read it. But I will. Tomorrow. I didn't sleep that night. The letter sat on my desk like a stone on my chest. I moved it once. Placed it beside the lamp. Then again. Slipped it into a drawer. But I could still feel it there, even when my eyes were closed. As if the paper itself was humming with answers I didn't know how to ask for. At some point around 3 a.m., I got up and walked circles through the house, the same house that once felt warm and full, now echoing with questions. The kind you don't say out loud. Questions like, when did we stop being honest with each other? Did she write that letter before or after she asked for space? Was there someone else? Was I someone else? I stood outside our bedroom door for 5 full minutes, watching her through the crack. She was curled on her side, breathing soft, unaware. It hit me how far apart we'd grown, not in drama, not in volume, but in something quieter, colder. The way you drift from a friend you once knew by heart. A slow erosion you don't notice until you're already standing on opposite shores. I used to think the worst thing you could feel in a marriage was anger. It's not. It's absence. It's waking up and realizing your partner has their own world now, one you don't belong to. The letter wasn't long. I finally opened it mid-morning, after standing in the kitchen staring at her coffee mug for 20 minutes like it could explain things to me. Just 2 paragraphs, handwritten. Neat. Deliberate. She didn't say anything shocking. No affair. No betrayal. Not directly. But her words cut in a different way. She wrote about how she didn't recognize herself lately. How she felt like she was living someone else's version of a life. That she missed the girl who used to get lost in painting, not laundry schedules. That she felt lonely in the routine. Not unloved, but invisible. Invisible. That word. It hit harder than any accusation could have. Because I realized something. I'd felt the same way, but I never said it out loud. We were 2 people sleeping side by side for years, both feeling unseen, both waiting for the other to notice. And we didn't. Instead of rebuilding, we retreated. Inward. Quietly. Painfully. Like strangers who once knew how to laugh in each other's language, but forgot every word with time. That night, I didn't bring up the letter. I didn't ask her what she wanted from me now. She acted normal, made dinner, watched her show, folded laundry. I played along. I didn't have the energy for truth. Not yet. But the shift was there. Subtle. Measurable. She lingered in the hallway longer when I walked by. Stood closer. Smiled like someone who didn't know whether to hope or apologize. I watched her fidget at the dinner table, twisting her napkin, stealing glances at me like she was trying to read something behind my silence. I wasn't being cold. I was just waiting. Waiting for her to choose. Not in words. In action. I'd done enough filling in the blanks. Enough pretending not to notice the distance. If she wanted to reach me, really reach me, it had to come from her this time. The next morning, I found something strange in the laundry basket, a shirt I hadn't worn in months. Still smelled like the cologne I used to wear when we were dating. I stared at it for a while, wondering if she'd put it there by accident or on purpose. Maybe it was her way of asking me not to give up. But the thing is, I wasn't sure if I still remembered how to come back. Not yet. I didn't ask her why she washed that shirt. I didn't need to. I knew the scent. It was the one she used to say reminded her of long drives with no destination. I used to wear it when I picked her up from her parents' house in our 20s. When we still kissed like we were inventing it. When silence between us meant comfort, not confusion. Now, everything felt loaded. That Saturday morning, she made pancakes, which she hadn't done in months. Blueberries, the way I liked. No comments. No fanfare. Just placed them on a plate and set it down in front of me while pretending to scroll her phone. It felt strange to eat something from her hands again. I watched her pretend not to watch me take the first bite. It was good, but food wasn't what I was hungry for. It's a weird thing, realizing that the person sitting across from you is trying to reconnect, but can't say it outright. She didn't know how, and maybe I didn't either. That scared me more than the silence ever had. We moved like actors in a play written by someone else. Later that day, I went into the garage to dig out some old camping gear. I told her I needed to reorganize things, but really I just needed air. Space of my own. The irony didn't escape me. She'd wanted space. Now I was living in it. There's something about the smell of dusty canvas and old lanterns that makes you remember who you used to be. I found the thermos we bought on our honeymoon in Asheville. The silver had dulled, the sticker half peeled off. I held it for a long time, remembering the way she used to lean into my arm when we drank cocoa under the trees, laughing at nothing. And then I remembered the way she pulled away from me on the couch last month when my hand brushed hers. Time doesn't just change people. It dims them. I sat there in the garage for what must have been over an hour. She didn't come looking. Maybe she thought I needed space too. Or maybe she was too afraid of what she might find if she did. That night, she came into the room with damp hair and no makeup. She hadn't looked like that around me in years, like herself. Not curated. Not ready for the world. Just her. I could tell she wanted to say something. I could feel it in the way she hovered near the dresser, folding the same sweater twice. But all she said was, "You going to bed?" "Soon," I answered. She hesitated. "You always take longer now." I didn't reply. Not to be rude. I just didn't know what to say. I wasn't trying to punish her. I wasn't trying to distance myself. I was just trying to figure out what was still real between us, and what we were clinging to out of fear. When she left the room, I noticed something on the nightstand. A small, folded square of watercolor paper. Her handwriting, the same soft loops that once filled my birthday cards and love notes. It said, "Would you go on a walk with me tomorrow?" That was it. No explanations. No apologies. Just a question. And somehow, it shook me more than the letter had. Because in that one quiet sentence, I saw something I hadn't seen in months. The woman I married was still in there, somewhere. And maybe, just maybe, she was finally looking for me. The question was I still where she left me? We didn't speak of the note. Not that night. Not the next morning. But it was there, like a shift in the air. A delicate pulse in the background of everything. When I walked into the kitchen the next day, she was already waiting by the door in her old windbreaker, sneakers tied like she was hoping I'd say yes. She didn't ask again. Just looked at me like she was holding her breath. I nodded. She smiled, quietly, not wide, not triumphant, just the smallest lift of her mouth. Like it cost her something to hope, and even more to receive. We started down the same trail we used to take when we first moved into the neighborhood. It winds behind the tennis courts, past a narrow stream and under a canopy of trees that bloom bright yellow in spring. But now it was late October. Cold. Sparse. The leaves had already started their descent, and every step cracked the dry earth beneath us. A fitting soundtrack for two people trying to make sense of what was left. For the first 15 minutes, we didn't talk. Just walked. She looked at everything, the branches, the water, the distance. I watched her, trying to remember the last time I studied her without bitterness or confusion. I used to know every freckle, every line in her smile. Now I wasn't sure what I was looking at. Was it still love? Or was it just memory dressed in familiar clothes? You used to walk faster, she said suddenly. I glanced at her. You used to walk closer. She looked down. A few more steps passed in silence. I never stopped caring, she said softly, still facing forward. Even when I asked for space. I didn't know how to explain what I was feeling. You didn't try, I replied. There was no anger in it. Just truth. I was scared, she admitted. It felt easier to drift than to say the wrong thing. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because part of me understood that in ways I hadn't before. Drifting doesn't make you bad. It makes you human. But it does come at a cost. We stopped at the old bench by the stream, worn and splintered. I used to propose hypothetical questions to her here. If we could live anywhere, where would you go? If you could only keep 3 memories, which ones would you choose? She never answered directly. That was always her way, responding with half a smile and an unrelated question of her own. But today, she sat without hesitation and said, "If you could go back, would you still marry me?" It stunned me. She wasn't asking for reassurance. She was bracing herself. I looked at her for a long time before answering. "Only if we promised not to disappear from each other," I said. "Not when life got hard. Not when the routine felt heavy. Not when the silence got comfortable." She blinked fast, but didn't cry. "I didn't mean to disappear," she whispered. "I know," I replied. And I did know. That was the hard part. I knew she never meant to leave emotionally. But she did. And in the time she was gone, I had to learn how to live without needing her. That changes a man. As we walked back, she reached out, first brushing my hand, then slowly curling her fingers around mine. I let her. But it didn't feel the same. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't familiar. That night, as I lay in bed beside her, I couldn't sleep. She was facing me in the dark, eyes open, silent. "Are we okay?" she asked. And for the first time, I didn't know what the right answer was. "I think we're trying," I said. "That's something." She moved closer, rested her head against my chest like she used to. But as I stared at the ceiling, my mind kept asking the question I wasn't ready to answer. Was trying going to be enough? The hardest part wasn't that she had pulled away. It was realizing that I had too, and now that she was reaching back, I wasn't sure I wanted to return. Something shifted in the weeks after that walk. She was trying. You could see it in the way she lingered at the dinner table, hoping for conversation. And how she started mentioning things I liked, random little observations that once would have made me smile. She bought my favorite coffee again. Rearranged the bookshelves the way I used to keep them. She even took off early from her studio twice to surprise me with dinner, as if actions could make up for all the missing words. And part of me appreciated it. I really did. But there's a truth nobody talks about when you're trying to repair something that's been emotionally neglected. You don't pick up where you left off. You don't return to love like a paused movie. You return to find your seat has been moved. The story changed. You're not the same character anymore. And neither is the person beside you. I started noticing all the small, once harmless things that now felt unfamiliar. Her laugh, it had changed. Quieter. Or maybe more guarded. She didn't smile with her eyes the same way. Her hugs felt like questions. Her kisses felt like memories reenacted, rather than moments happening in real time. One night, I sat in the driveway for 20 minutes after work. Not because I was dreading seeing her, but because I didn't know how to enter that space anymore. Our home. It still smelled like her shampoo. Her paintings were still hanging in the hall. Our dog still came bounding to the door the second I pulled up. But the emotional wiring had changed. There was warmth in the rooms, sure, but it was cautious. Tentative. Like we were both waiting for the other to define what we were now. We didn't sleep close anymore. That happened gradually, not out of coldness, just routine. Her side, my side, middle untouched. One morning, I woke up and realized it had been weeks since I'd kissed her forehead. Months since I'd held her just to hold her. The kind of things that don't break you all at once. They wear down your soul in microscopic ways. She asked me one evening if I wanted to go away for a weekend together. Just the two of us. Get out of our heads, she said. Be somewhere that doesn't hold so many expectations. I said maybe. She tried to hide her disappointment, but I saw it. And I saw something else in myself too, hesitation. Not the kind that comes from fear. The kind that comes from knowing you've changed, and that going back would mean pretending you hadn't. That weekend, I took a long walk by myself. I didn't tell her where I was going. I just left my phone on the kitchen counter and wandered down the street until it disappeared behind me. I passed a park where we used to take our goddaughter. The swings were empty, leaves curled along the edges of the path. I sat on the same bench I had watched her tie shoes and braid hair and smile so brightly at her to look at her. I sat there and asked myself something I'd been too scared to ask until that moment. If she had never asked for space, would we still be here, like this? And the deeper question that followed. If she hadn't pulled away, would I have ever realized how far gone I already was? Sometimes people leaving doesn't break us. It reveals that we were already broken. We just hadn't noticed yet. That night, when I got home, she was waiting for me at the top of the stairs. She didn't ask where I'd been. She didn't scold. She didn't accuse. She just looked at me with these wide, tired eyes and said, "Are you still in this?" And I didn't answer. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know if saying yes would be for her benefit or mine. I never imagined love would sound like silence. But there we were, sitting across from each other at the kitchen table on a Thursday night, two people who used to finish each other's sentences, now carefully choosing every word like we were applying for a loan instead of rebuilding a marriage. She made pasta. It was good. She'd lit a candle, even dimmed the lights. I think she thought it would help us feel something again. The way the flicker caught her face made her look younger. I watched her twirl spaghetti around her fork with the kind of delicate effort you use when you're trying not to crack in front of someone. She was trying. I wasn't blind to it. She was reaching for me in all the small ways that go unnoticed unless you're really paying attention. The soft tone in her voice. The freshly laundered sweatshirt she folded and left on my side of the bed. The way she'd ask, "How was work?" and actually wait for an answer. But she didn't know that by the time she said she wanted space, I had already started building walls in my mind. Quiet ones. Wordless ones. You don't know you're withdrawing until it's too late to explain why. That night, I said, "I'm thinking about getting away for a few days." Alone. She blinked. Her fork paused midair. She didn't ask where. She didn't ask why. She just said, "Okay." That okay hit harder than if she'd cried. Because it sounded like she expected it. Like she had already rehearsed this scene in her head and decided to take the quieter route, to avoid another fracture. I packed lightly. Not as a threat, not as a gesture. I wasn't trying to scare her. I just needed space of my own now. A different kind. Not to be alone, but to see myself again. Away from the version of me who had become a background character in our marriage. The cabin I rented wasn't far. 2 hours north. Enough to feel like I was elsewhere, but not lost. It rained the entire second day, a soft, drizzling kind of rain that you can't hear unless you're quiet inside too. I sat by the window with a blanket and my old journal, the one I hadn't touched in years. Back when I used to write things just to hear myself think. I flipped through pages filled with sketches of who I used to be. Dreams I'd written down in my early 30s. Trips I wanted to take with her. Hopes I had for a family, a business, a version of life we never really chased because it always felt like there'd be time. But time wasn't generous. It was subtle, and fast, and cruel in the way it steals passion and replaces it with patterns. The next morning, I checked my phone and saw 3 unread messages. All from her. Not dramatic. Not demanding. Just quiet check-ins. 1. Are you okay? 2. Do you want me to give you more time? 3. I miss you. The old me would have called her right then. Would have rushed home. Would have carried guilt in my chest like it was a trophy for being a good husband. But the man sitting in that cabin? He didn't want to rush anything. He wanted to understand, really understand, what he was walking back into. And whether it was love, or just the shadow of love, worn down by years of compromise and unsaid things. That evening, I wrote her back. I'm thinking, I'm not done, but I need to know we're not just trying to fix the comfort of each other's presence. I need to know we're both still alive inside this thing, not just moving pieces around hoping they'll land where they used to. I sent it and turned off my phone. Then I poured myself a cup of tea, wrapped the blanket tighter around me, and for the first time in months, let myself cry. Not because of her, not even because of us, but because I finally realized how long I'd gone without hearing the sound of my own heart breaking and how quietly it had learned to suffer in silence. The drive back was longer than I remembered. It wasn't the rain or the road that stretched out the journey. It was the silence between what I had left behind and what I was returning to. It was the weight of questions I couldn't yet answer. It was the uncertainty of whether walking back into our home meant reclaiming love, or simply re-entering an echo of it. By the time I turned the key in the door, it felt like stepping into someone else's life. The familiar things were still there, the worn-out shoes at the entrance, the stack of unread books on the coffee table, the faint smell of lavender she used to clean the kitchen with. But the air felt different, heavier. She was sitting at the table, looking out the window. She didn't turn when I entered. She didn't need to. We had already exchanged 1,000 words without speaking in the last few days. I didn't think you'd be back so soon, she said, her voice soft, like she was waiting for me to decide what came next. I'm not sure what to do with any of it, I replied honestly. It wasn't a question, but a statement, something I hadn't fully accepted until that moment. She finally turned to face me, her expression unreadable. There was no anger, no pleading, just a deep, quiet weariness that had settled between us like dust that couldn't be brushed away anymore. I didn't know if you'd come back at all, she said, and there was a quiet finality to her words that hit me harder than anything else. I could see it now. She wasn't asking me to fix us. She wasn't asking me to save the marriage. She was waiting for me to figure out whether we were worth saving. And that was something I hadn't fully understood until then. She had already started making peace with the possibility that we might be two people who had run out of roads to walk together. And that scared me more than I ever thought it would. I dropped my bag by the door and leaned against the wall. There was no rushing this. No pretending everything was fine. There was only this moment, where we were both painfully aware of the silence that stretched between us. I don't want to walk away, I said, the words coming out before I had a chance to stop them. Her eyes softened, but she didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence told me everything I had been avoiding. The question wasn't about love anymore. It was about what happens after love fades and you're left trying to piece something back together that was never really broken, just abandoned. I sat down across from her. What are we doing, Callie? I asked. What do we even do now? And for the first time in ages, she didn't flinch. She didn't retreat into the distance. She didn't try to hide behind any walls. I don't know, Lowell, she said quietly. I don't know what we can do, but I don't want to be someone who stops trying to figure it out. I stared at her, really stared, as if I had never seen her before. Not the woman I thought I knew, but the woman sitting here now. The one who had seen me fall apart and still was willing to wait, not because she expected things to magically improve, but because she still believed there was something worth fighting for. And I realized then, with a strange clarity that came from nowhere, that this was the moment we could no longer keep pretending. We had been existing in the spaces between each other for too long, in the quiet misunderstandings, in the moments we let slip by without saying what we needed. And now we were standing at the edge of it, both of us terrified, both of us aware of the chasm that had opened between us. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was fighting her or myself. I was just fighting for the chance to be us again, even if that meant it would never be the same. I took a deep breath and reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. I don't know if we can fix everything, but I know I don't want to give up on figuring it out with you, I said. She looked at me for a long moment and then nodded slowly. Me neither. And in that moment, we both knew that love wasn't about fixing the broken parts. It was about accepting that the cracks were part of who we were now. We weren't the same people we were when we met, when we first fell in love, and maybe we never would be again. But that wasn't the end of us. It was just the beginning of something new, something less certain, something harder to define, But maybe that was okay. The morning after that conversation, something was different. Not big, not dramatic. Just quieter and lighter. We woke up at the same time, both of us still lying in the center of the bed, not on opposite sides like before. Her hair was a mess. My hand had somehow ended up resting near hers, and there was a peace in that stillness I hadn't felt in years. We didn't rush into any promises. We didn't say things like, "I'll never hurt you again," or "Everything will go back to how it was." Because we both knew that wasn't true. What we could offer each other now wasn't a rewind. It was a slow rebuild. And rebuilding isn't romantic. It's intentional, quiet, and sometimes awkward. But it's also real. That weekend, we did something we hadn't done in years. We left the house with no destination. Just got in the car and drove. We didn't talk about what we were trying to fix. We didn't rehash what went wrong. We just pointed the car north and ended up in a small town with a diner that still used paper menus and had pies lined up on display. We ate. We laughed, not because everything was okay, but because for the first time in months, it didn't feel so heavy. On the way home, she reached over and turned down the music. "I think we forgot how to enjoy each other," she said. I glanced at her, nodding. "And now, we're remembering." That night, she left a note on my pillow. Just a single sentence, scribbled in her old handwriting. "Thanks for not giving up." I kept it. It sits now folded inside the journal I brought to the cabin, the same one I filled with doubts and questions. I haven't written anything new in it yet. I think I'm waiting. Not for something dramatic. Just for the quiet evidence that we're choosing each other again, over and over, even when it's hard, even when it's imperfect. A few weeks later, we started a new tradition. Nothing fancy, just walking together every Sunday morning before we do anything else. No phones. No distractions. Just time. Our time. Sometimes we talk. Sometimes we walk in silence. But the difference now? We're walking side by side. By choice. And that, after everything, is more than enough.